सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। समस्तजनकल्याणी निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। हरि ओम। One of the easiest way of studying the Shastra is to study oneself. If we inculcate a habit of observing ourselves as a third party entity, it helps a lot to understand what is happening in this world vis-a-vis me. There should be no doubt in mind that my world is what I perceive. I have no idea of actually what the world is, and I'm never concerned also with it, because what I perceive, my organ of perception being mind, is what my world is. So I have no connection with something that is happening in the city of Santiago, because it is not within compass of my perception. So if I observe myself as one can, few of the easy conclusions that one can draw is, there are two types of perceptions that I normally come across. Umpteen number of objects, living, non-living, sentient, non-sentient, are seen by me, perceived by me on a daily basis. I see a tree in a forest. So when I look at a tree in the forest, my outlook is very simple. There is a forest, there is a tree, and it resembles what I have seen earlier and called as tree. So it gives me a knowledge that this is a tree. And tree being a tree, it might make me happy, may not make me happy, or I may not elicit any response to that. But response aside, perception itself is very clean that there is a tree in the forest. It's a common perception, everybody has it. We are driving on the road and there are trees in the forest. They don't bother us. They may make us happy or not. That is a reaction response pattern. That's a different issue altogether. But being a tree there hasn't really caused me any concern. Now the same tree comes closer to me and gets planted in my garden. Now when I look at the tree, it becomes tree in my garden. My perception is now altered. The tree hasn't changed. What has changed is the tree has become my tree. I am not keeping the tree in my pocket, certainly not. The tree hasn't changed at all. The place for the tree also hasn't changed much, because there was a ground there in which normally it grows, and it grew here. It's still giving the same result. It gives fruits there and it gives fruits here. It has leaves there, it has leaves here. But something has drastically changed, and the change is my tree. So Samanya Jnana, universal knowledge or a common knowledge, is it's a tree. Vishesha Jnana, specific knowledge, spatial aspect of the knowledge now added is this is my tree. When we say this is my tree, this erroneous impression that this is my tree is called avidya. Calling a tree as a tree and enjoying the tree as tree is not an issue at all. No one says stop loving your children. It will be against the Shastra if it is said so. So do love your children. Why? Because they are children. The issue is I love them because they are my children. And once that my or mine comes, the aspect that had changed is the psychological aspect. So, an object and a subject both are psychophysical individuals. Every object in this world, every subject in this world has a physicality and a psychological aspect. So everything that we see, including the one who is perceiving, is a psychophysical substance. If physicality is more, it becomes more insentient. If psychological aspect is more, it becomes more sentient subject. Moving from object to subject is nothing else but reducing the physicality and increasing the psychological aspect. Psychological aspect is nothing else but analytical aspect. You are able to decipher what is happening. Let us say structure of an atom elicits no response in us. Why? I don't understand anything into it. My psychic ability or psychological ability or intellect is not developed to an extent of understanding the intricacies of an atomic structure. The time when it is developed, I become a scientist. So far, I am not a scientist. So, two aspects always standing close to each other, having a particular contribution in the formation of a substance. One is psychological, one is physical. Once we know this, then the question comes, the psychological aspect can go up and down, the physical aspect can go up and down, they are inversely proportional to each other in the existence, as we call it. A stone will have a higher physical aspect and a very, very faint psychological aspect into it. That's why we call it as insentient, because sense is the effect of psychological aspect, psychological apparatus. Once this is clear to us, then comes the question, who am I? Am I an object or a subject? Will I be considered as an object or as a subject? Because so far I've been calling myself as a subject. I become a subject when in a relationship I'm trying to apprehend an object. Two things are there. Both are not apprehending each other. They'll be objects. One is apprehending the other, this becomes the subject and this becomes the object. Right? One has ability to apprehend, one doesn't have ability to apprehend, so this becomes a subject and this becomes an object. Very easy to understand. Now comes the question that the method of apprehending anything or method of perceiving anything, is it uniform or does it have variations? The method of perception, is it uniform or does it have variations? But why should we be getting into it at all? The reason why we are trying to get into it is nothing happens without perception in this world. The moment you say, I don't perceive, the world doesn't exist. Right now, anything beyond the walls of this room are not existing for us because the concentration is here. So, right now, the perception is restricted and limited to an object or to a subject that has been discussed upon with the help of the indriyas, whichever you use. The indriyas have no role to play, they are poor slaves of whatever you tell them, they do. They are the most neutral things in the world. रोशनी का कुछ मकान नहीं होता, जहां रखोगे रोशनी फैलाएंगे. Light doesn't have any prejudice, it just enlightens. So indriyas work in the same manner. Now comes the question that if it is the perception with which I am interacting with this world, that means my definition of world itself is derived from the perception. Corollary number 1. 2. There can be variations in the perception. Agreed. 3. Why at all perceive? Can I stop the perception? Is it possible to stop the perception? It is like asking a source of light, can you still continue to give the light but there should be no light around? It is inherent in the light that it will enlighten. It is inherent in the organs of perception that it will perceive. Which would mean I cannot stop my perception. It brings us to the second part. I can fine-tune my perception. And how do I fine-tune it? In a very selfish manner. What is a selfish manner? I shall not have any perception that causes me pain. In fact, my every effort in this world, what I am trying to do is to avoid the pain and to accept the happiness. Every perception we are trying to fine-tune in that manner. Then where is the fallacy? The fallacy is the perception movement is tainted with the ego, the fallacy arises. Perception per se has no problem. Seeing Vasishtha Ji as one human being, as one source of consciousness, it's not a problem. He is not a good man. Now what has happened? Perception has resulted into opinion formation, and that opinion formation is based on my analytical ability which I have employed, and with that I have, instead of creating a perception, I have created a response perception. Response to the perception is the one that is creating the issue, not the perception. A saintly person goes to a very bad area. Nothing happens to him. Why? Perception is same, response to the perception is different. So what is important in the whole discussion is not to have issues with the perception, but to work upon a response to the perception. More the response without the ego, and in simpler words, the ego can be defined as me and mine. That which is not me and mine shall always bring me purest pleasure because it is pure perception. This is a small baby. Lots of videos keep circulating these days about a baby laughing. We enjoy it. Ideally speaking, why should we be enjoying it? The enjoyment comes from the fact that I do not call anything in that, I am not connected with that. It comes in what is called as a pure entertainment. Sometimes in the movies, the critics call it as this is a pure entertaining movie. Moment it becomes an art movie, you get involved into it, and then the perceptions start firing, and then you feel sad after the movie. The perception of supposedly a fictitious thing also can elicit a response simply because I identified with the wrong perception. Instead, if I'm able to have the perception without any intermingling of egoistic tendency into it, the perception becomes a highly pleasurable thing. And then, as J. Krishnamurti says, we have never observed a tree. A leaf of a tree can give you immense amount of pleasure provided it is perceived without the iota of ego into it. Taking the same logic little forward, anything that I call me mine, if I drop those connotations about my perceptions, the things that are perceived will start giving me less and less pain. Absence of pain is referred as pleasure. So if you ask a saintly person, are you getting pleasure out of it? He said, no, the pain is absent. It's a daylight. It's a daylight. What about darkness? There is no darkness, that much I know. Light, otherwise it is always existing. The pleasure as a contrary thing of sorrow or unhappiness is only when both dvandva, both dual thing is existing. Question now is, what happens when I am perceiving without ego? Perceiver is same. One is perceiving with ego, one is perceiving without ego. What is the difference? And who is the perceiver in these two? When anything is perceived from an egoistic standpoint, the perceiver is limited. And that limited perceiver is called jiva. When the same thing is perceived without ego, what has happened? Direct perception by consciousness has happened. A ray of light is coming. It is coming and falling on an object. Nothing has happened. So a clean ray of light came and fell on the object. A prism is put in between. The ray of light now is falling on the prism and the rainbow is created. Since the rainbow is created, colors are perceived. Since colors are perceived, liking a color, not liking a color has emanated. Now what we are trying to do is, we are trying to sort out the colors. Where are we going wrong? We are trying to correct the effects. Shastra says, correct the cause. Parinama, effect. How many are there? How many you will correct? Anger. I should not get angry. I have to work on my anger. I worked on my anger. Let me work on my greed now. Let me work on my greed. Let me work. How long? Because the permutation combinations of the colors are enormous. What is an easier way? Stop as much diffraction as you can and start moving towards the source by working on the prism, the mind. And how do you work on the mind? by knowing the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is to work with the help of consciousness in deciphering the world. The work that it shall continue to do till its existence has been annihilated, which Gurudeva calls as till we have done a suicide of the mind. And how do we work on that? One of the way of working on that is, since the mind asks for a work, give it a work that will slowly sap the energy of the mind. To give work to the mind needs to be tamed. Untamed bull cannot be put for the work. So someone might just say that, fair enough, let me start working on my mind. The fact is that taming of the bull is required. Taming is possible only when I myself not used to using the mind in an erroneous manner, which in Shastra is called Shuddhata, purity. Every time I do a selfish act, a taint comes into my character. A tainted behavior cannot help taming the mind called bull. If that is the case, then one who has tamed the mind mainly because of purity of character. Character depends on karma. Karma depends on prarabdha. Prarabdha is generated by karma. So the first thing first, the karma first, because that's the screen. Once the karma gets fine-tuned, what is fine-tuning of karma? In whichever guna you are, start moving up in that guna. How do I know which guna I belong to? By observing myself. What is required for observing yourself? To be convinced that there is something worth observing in me. If I consider myself omnipotent, as many people do, nobody can save them. There's an election going on. There is a politician at the age of 80 also. He stood in the rainy season and delivered a fiery speech. Look at him. What is the conclusion of this news? The conclusion is the person is under enormous amount of stupidity. And what is the stupidity? Omnipotency. In this world, I am a successful person. You are not. Once you know that I am full of issues with me, then only you can put yourself on observing chamber. In the observing chamber, if I come to know that I am dominated by certain things, as Swami Shivananda says, write down. What time do you get up? Sir, as early as 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Tamoguna is definitely preponderant. What do you like to eat? Very, very tasty and pungent, and that Tamoguna is predominant in you. गीता मज़ा नहीं आता है, कोशिश करता हूँ, but somehow it doesn't. तमोगुण is predominant. न गीता पढ़ता हूँ, मैं गीता पढ़ता हूँ, मॉर्निंग गीता भी पढ़ता हूँ, उसके बाद उपनिषद 2 क्लासेस भी करता हूँ. रजोगुण is very predominant. मेरा क्या है? I start a book but I never finish it. I in between, I पता नहीं something happens, then I go to the other one. I'm like this. रजोगुण. अकेलापन खाने को दौड़ता है. When I'm alone, it really bothers me a lot. Rajoguna. Next 2 hours are free for you. What shall we do? Rajoguna. And if I feel I must get this knowledge, I must observe myself, I must study myself, I must see what is happening to my mind, I must understand what Gurudeva exactly went through. I constantly think about Gurudeva, I constantly think about salvation, I constantly think about Bhagavad Gita, Sattva-guna is getting predominant in me. Only when Sattva-guna is becoming predominant, taming of the mind is possible. Now he will start listening to you. A mind that is pestered on tamoguna and rajoguna can never be tamed. It is a postulate. No questions about it. It is a postulate. Asuri tendency, Rakshasa sat for meditation. We don't see that in Purana. Rishi sat for meditation. Munir sat for meditation. Sattva guna preponderance. And this is where no one is condemned. You may not have a particular guna preponderance because of your prarabdha. Agreed. So bad a prarabdha that a friend of mine was born into liquor selling family. Liquor means not the liquor shop, the liquor on the side, roadside. The worst of the liquor. He's a good friend of mine. By prarabdha vasha he came there. Guna vasha he never drank. You may have preponderance of certain gunas in you because of prarabdha, yet it is in your hands because choices are always there. That is the reason we always think what to do. What to means there is a choice. Once these things are done, then we come to the mind and then we employ the mind in what? In tackling the cause of distortion of perception. Our whole issue is distorted perception of this world. What is distorted perception? Egoistic perception is a distorted perception. When I say my child, not much objection is taken by Shastra. Neighbor's child is objected upon. Call neighbor's child also my child, no problem. The next stage is child, neither mine nor neighbor's. Extreme, two extremes are there. One extreme is this is me, mine, everything else is others. Then we come into the center, that is also mine, this is also mine. And then we come to the last stage, nothing is mine. Why? I owe everything. This progression to do this, after the mind has been tamed, then when we come to the taming of mind, we tame our mind through meditation. Taming is stopping the activity. What is taming of anything? Reducing and then eventually stopping the activity. And how do you eventually reduce and stop the activity? By employing it into an activity which shall slowly sap the energy of that. And it has been found by the yoga people of Patanjali's Yoga Shastra because they minutely studied mind. Yoga Shastra is a study of mind. Perception and mind is the main subject of Patanjali's Yoga Shastra. What happens when mind is fully active, what happens when mind is tamed, and what happens when the mind is not there. This is the subject of Patanjali's Yoga Shastra in simpler words. What does it say? It says that the inherent tendency of a mind to get distracted contracted into multiple things is tamed by reducing the multiplicity of its engagement into few things, eventually bringing into one thing. And that bringing the multiplicity of scattering tendency of mind into one thing is called dhyanam or concentration. But the fact remains, still the mind is there, it requires an object. Mind cannot be tamed without an object. What object you keep? Your choice. So it keeps screening amongst the multiple choices, that is called vikalpa. It holds on to one of them called nishchaya. It enjoys the effect of concentration, which we call effect of object. There is no effect in the object. Rasa nishpatti is the resultant effect of the concentration of mind, not the object. So neither the vada, nor the food, nor the liquor, nor the woman, nothing gives happiness. The happiness is coming from the momentary concentration that we achieve at the exclusion of all other objects and subjects. Taking the cue from the same tendency of mind, when we try to put the mind onto one thing for what is called as concentration or dhanam, three ways are possible. One beautiful way utilized by most of the Yoga Shastra Vidwan are, mind has an ability of extrapolation. Utilize this ability of extrapolation called imagination, which anyway we employ, because when objects are not into the radar of mind, the object that is taken for dissection by the mind is memory. When the objects are not around, in fact, what happens? Sometimes the objects are of interest are not there, sometimes we are not interested in the object. You are sitting in a condolence meeting. You are not in condolence meeting. Where is the mind? Mind is contemplating something else by imagining. Imagination is extrapolation. After 65, beautiful bungalow, cool breeze, small hammock, tree. What is this? It's imagination. We are imagining our retirement. It hasn't happened. In fact, we have imagined the type of bungalow also where we will be staying. It's all imagination. Utilizing the same faculty of imagination, Shastra tells us that if you are so powerful imagination, take any substance and call it God. Why not? If you have ability of imagination, then you can imagine anything anywhere. To do that, when you take an object, that object is called pratika. Pratika, representative. Again, the mind has a tendency of preferring something over something. Inherent tendency. So if I give so much liberty that you can take anything in this world as a pratika, it can work. But if I give specifics to that, then mind believes more into it. So Shaligrama. Not all stones. Shaligrama specifically, or Shivalingam. In fact, the word Shiva Lingam itself means Lingam is Chinna. So it is a Chinna of Shiva. It is not Shiva, it is Chinna of Shiva. That's what we say. This is Shiva Lingam. Now what has happened? There is a preconceived notion that this is not a stone, but it is a representative of a particular deity. Shaligramam, Vishnu. Shivalingam, Shiva. Now the representation has already come into it. Now I put that in front of me. Already my Psychological apparatus has been elevated because moment I see a shaligram, I feel this is called Vishwas. Vishwas is not a common word, it is a Shastriya Shabda. Vidhi, Vishwas and Ichha, these three things are required for Dhanam. Vidhi, the statement from Vedas. Vishwasa, this is Vishnu. And Ichha, Rajoguna. If you don't have Rajoguna, Dhyan ही नहीं होगा ना. Desire is Rajoguna. Action has to be Rajoguna. So once Vidhi, Vishwas and Ichha is there, take that pratik and start contemplating that it is nothing else but Vishnu. This is called pratik upasana. Pratik upasana. Now I am concentrating on stone. Maybe I am taking the water, putting it, pouring over it. So any Westerner who comes says that, oh my God, how stupid these people. I remember once we installed a machine for making chain, gold chain. The Italian guys came down. We were worshipping the machine. And he laughed at it. He said, this is a machine. I mean, it's not God. Now, who should have laughed at whom? But he was laughing at me. I did not, of course, explain what to him. The fact is, this machine is giving me a sustenance. The sustenance is coming from the Lord, and that is how the Lord is residing in the machine, and that is the reason we have what is called Shastra Puja. That is that which makes me sustain in this world. Similarly, now that Vishnu is there, when I start pouring the water into it, or when I do the Deva Pujam, I do not say that how nicely the copper has been smelted into a dye. No. We say Balakrishna is taking bath. Why? I am trying to put my mind into a concept called Balakrishna. What has happened for that moment? I have excluded all other thoughts. Indirectly, without knowing, I have already practiced at least minuscule level of concentration. Now increase it. So if you increase it, then somebody might ask a question, the educated ones. And an educated question would be, hold on. If this is what concentration is, what if I concentrate in my work? Most welcome, sir. Work is worship. Same concentration is required to do everything in this world. And every concentration will yield some result. So pratika upasana, but somebody said that I don't want a stone in front of me. I just want to contemplate on what? On Lord Ram, on Lord Krishna. Sauli Murat hai, he has got bluish hue, smile on the face. Or it is Kali, yes, an atrocious looking female for a Western person. For us, a Shakti Rupa in the most vivacious form, she can be there. I can worship her also. Now I don't require a pratika. This is called Dheya Dhyana. The first one was Pratika Dhyana. This is called Dheya Dhyana. The Dheya is directly in front of you. Close your eyes and just imagine the Krishna that you know. We all have read about Krishna, but everybody's Krishna because it is an individual thing. You must have seen that we have certain predilections for certain gods. It has got some prarabdha influence into it. Certain gods, not that we are against them, but okay. Ganeshji, yes. There is a inclination towards a particular god. That is why they say Ishta Devata. Ishta, I like it. Ishta Devata. Possibilities that I am not sure exactly which. Kula Devata. What is Kula Devata? Because since childhood you have been seeing it, your father, your grandfather doing it, you naturally follow that. Hum log Shaiva hai. We are Shaivas. Why? Shiva has been we are worshipping Shiva. Fair enough. वैष्णव है. Fair enough. हमारे यहाँ पे ऐसे लगाया जाता है, ऐसे नहीं. Fair enough. ध्येय ध्यान. People of accomplished stature. Now I am coming towards Gurudeva's dhyana. Which murti did Gurudeva took to Uttarkashi? None. Tapovan Maharaj had which murti? None. And both were meditating? Yes. Upon what they were meditating? They were meditating first Dheya Dharana, Dheya Dhyanam, and then meditating upon the Nirguna Nirakar, the most difficult of Dhyanam. In fact, Tapovan Maharaj had a discussion with the then Shankaracharya of Puri, who was Shantyananda Maharaj, and he said, I do Ahangraha Upasana. Aham Graha, I presume myself to be Brahman. It is so abstract. It is so difficult. Imagine yourself as nobody. How can you do that? But these people can. Why? Enormous power of concentration. All the people, all the disciples of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, after Ramakrishna passed away, at a camp called Varahanagar, an absolute dilapidated building, who was supposed to have been haunted by the ghosts, so they got it cheaper. All the disciples went there, and all of them, from morning moment they used to get up, they used to sit in Dhyanam. To an extent, Ramakrishnananda Maharaj, Shashi Maharaj, used to come and literally wake them up. Come for food. Enough of meditation. See the problem. Ours says, when can I leave the food and when I can do for meditation? So the third one is called Ahangraha Upasana. Once we have that, then what happens? We tame the mind and then we start getting closer to the consciousness, not the identification of consciousness. Getting closer to the consciousness is etadvai tat. Oh, it is that. It is verily that. Kathopanishada is bringing through different mantras every sadhaka towards the Atman. The reason is, once somebody has bathed in Ganga, he is bathed in Ganga. Then nothing else is required. Getting the person to the source of Ganga or the Ganga is an issue. And that is why it says the same consciousness that presides over. Now Dharmaraja, Yama Dharma, is trying to explain same Atma Tattvam in so many different ways. Last almost 40 lectures we are trying to see the same thing. How beautiful in different ways it is trying to see. Now Kathopanishada is coming to the Dvitiya Valli, and now they are very particular about what? Let me start telling you Atma Tattva. I spoke about Atma Tattva everywhere. Now I am trying to tell you Atma Tattva in your own body. Have we ever thought that this assemblage called body, how is it such a powerful instrument of perception? It is assemblage of Pancha Mahabhuta, because when we die, it goes back to Pancha Mahabhuta. So one thing is sure, and that is happening in front of our eyes. In fact, we burn it also because Pancha Mahabhuta goes back to Pancha Mahabhuta. If this is so, then what makes it so sentient when it is alive? And the science says, he was breathing, heart was beating. Again, the main problem with science is how it is always explained. Why? There is a big question mark. Why did the heart beat and why did the heart stop? How it stopped? Because there was a plaque. The coronaries went into spasm. How? Yes. Why? Generally, when there is a plaque, it stops. How? Yes. Why? Adenovirus causes common cold. How? Why me? We are four brothers. My nose is always blocked. I am always sneezing. I have got allergy. Brother doesn't have it. How is always explained by this? Why is not explained? So when we come back to our own moment of surprise called body, Shariram, this Shariram is kept conscious of two things simultaneously. I am conscious of myself and I am conscious of my surroundings. In medicine, there is a word called proprioception. Example of proprioception is when you drive, where are you looking? Through the screen, right? Through the windscreen, we are looking towards the road. How is that the leg is working on accelerator? We are not looking at it. And at the same time, you are aware that I pressed it, I released it. I pressed it, I released it. I must press it. Let me take a step further in proprioception. How do